Vienna, 1906. Just as the last snow of March melted along the wrought iron edges of the Schönbrunn Palace's northern terrace, Empress Delphine Odair stood in full court dress beneath the frost-dusted linden trees, her breath visible in the morning chill. The gold thread of her gown glinted faintly in the pale light, but her gloved hands stayed clenched at her sides. She was waiting 20 minutes early for the man she was forbidden to wait for. Andreas Hale arrived through the servants' gate, as he always did. He said nothing as he approached. He never did. That was part of why she trusted him. "I shouldn't have summoned you here," she whispered, eyes fixed on the gravel path between them. "You didn't," Andreas answered, his voice low, steady. "I came because you looked at me yesterday during council." Delphine turned her face slightly, just enough to hide the flicker of warmth that rose uninvited. "You shouldn't have noticed." "I always notice." That silenced her. The wind moved through the linden branches again, and somewhere in the courtyard behind them, a bell rang the hour. He stepped closer, not enough to touch, never enough for that, but close enough that she could smell the leather of his gloves, the starch of his collar. Andreas Hale, her quiet advisor, born to a Lutheran schoolmaster in Graz, now risen through merit to serve at the Empress's ear. Yet he had no noble title, no patron, and no right to share a private courtyard with the ruler of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. "Delphine," he said, breaking every rule of protocol with that single word, "I need to tell you something." Her fingers trembled inside her gloves. "You're leaving?" "No." She exhaled. "There's a man. Count Roch. He's been bribing members of the lower chamber to push through the Transylvania tariffs. It will bankrupt the southern farmers, especially the Romani villages. You cannot sign the council's draft." Delphine turned sharply. "But the tariffs passed. I saw the figures last night. They were falsified. I have the originals. Hidden. You could be executed," she said, voice breaking. "That's treason." "No," he said again, softer this time. "It's loyalty. To you." She looked up at him. He did not move. But his eyes, those gray eyes, held 1,000 things he'd never say aloud. "Where are they?" she asked. "I'll bring them to you tonight. After the opera." "That's impossible. I'll be surrounded." "The forbidden courtyard," he said. "Behind the east wing. I know the gatekeeper. He owes me a favor." Delphine hesitated, then nodded once. "Be careful, Andreas." He bowed, not too deeply, and vanished through the trimmed hedgerows the way he'd come. She stood alone again, heart pounding harder than it had in years. That evening, she endured the opera in a daze of silks and applause. Her husband, Emperor Ludwig, had died 2 years earlier of pneumonia, leaving her with the crown and a palace full of men who thought her too young, too soft, too easily swayed. They did not know Delphine Odair. Not truly. By midnight, she slipped past the sleeping maids and down the servants' stairwell, wrapped in a plain wool cloak. Her golden hair was pinned beneath a black scarf. She moved like a ghost across the snow-damp stones, past the kitchens, into the shadow of the east wing. The forbidden courtyard had earned its name decades earlier, when a former empress had met her fencing master there in secret. The scandal had nearly dissolved the royal marriage. Now it was locked from the inside, the iron gate rusted and half forgotten. Andreas waited, lantern unlit, beside the gate's peeling pillar. He opened it without a word and let her inside. "You came," he said, closing the gate behind them. "I had to." He reached into his coat and pulled out a bundle of papers, sealed with wax and bound in twine. "These are the originals," he said. "Sign these instead. When the ministers protest, demand an audit. Publicly. They'll fold." She took them, fingers brushing his. The contact sent a shock through her. "Andreas." He turned to look at her fully. "I know. We can't. No. We mustn't." But neither moved. The courtyard was quiet. Snow lay in patches beneath the bare rose trellises. The marble bench beside the fountain was speckled with frost. She stepped toward it, and he followed. "You're not afraid?" she asked. "Of you?" "Always." "Of this?" He looked at their hands. "Never." She sat. He remained standing. The silence between them cracked with everything unsaid. "I've thought about this," she said finally. "About you. About what it would mean." "I know," he said. "So have I. I can't marry again. The Constitution won't allow it." "There are other ways to be with someone," Andreas said, his voice even. "Not for an empress." "Then change the rules," he said. "You change everything else." She laughed, A quiet, startled sound. You have no idea the danger you're in. I know exactly, he said. And I'm staying. Delphine stood then, slowly, and reached up to touch his cheek. Just once. Just long enough to make it real. Then footsteps echoed on the gravel path. They turned as one. A figure in full military uniform stepped into the courtyard. Colonel Mayer, head of the palace guard. Your Majesty, he said, bowing stiffly. You are needed. Urgently. There's been a duel at dawn declared over the Transylvania tariffs. Count Roch has challenged the Minister of Agriculture. Delphine froze. What? It's already arranged. The Count claims treason. He says someone altered the records. Andreas stepped forward. Then it's me he wants. No, Delphine said, her voice sharp. It's me he'll get. Colonel Mayer's eyes widened. Your Majesty, I'll answer the accusation myself. But not before I make this public. She turned to Andreas. Go. I'll send for you when it's safe. I'm not leaving you alone in this. You are, she said. Because that's how we both survive. For now. He nodded, jaw tight, and slipped into the shadows. Mayer escorted her back through the gate. By the time the sun rose, the scandal had erupted. The duel never happened. Delphine appeared before the council with the original records in hand and accused Count Roch of corruption. The ministers backed down. The Count fled to Trieste. Andreas disappeared from official records that morning. But not from her heart. Not from the forbidden courtyard, where she returned each week, always at night. Always alone until the day she didn't have to come in secret anymore. The scent of ink still clung to Delphine's fingers as she stepped into the map room, where morning light filtered through tall windows and settled upon dusted lacquered globes. The council had dispersed. Her decree public, irrevocable, had been signed, sealed, and read aloud in front of the full chamber. The original records Andreas had given her had been placed beneath glass, guarded now by 2 trusted officers from the Imperial Archives. No one dared dispute them. But her hand trembled slightly as she traced the border of Galicia on the map table. Not from fear. That had passed. Now it was something else, an ache shaped by absence. She hadn't seen Andreas since the courtyard. His name had not passed anyone's lips. His quarters had been emptied under orders attributed to a reassignment to the Foreign Office. No one questioned it. That, more than anything, told her just how carefully he had planned for this. A quiet knock turned her toward the doorway. Come, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. The door opened, and Sister Anneliese entered, her plain wimple casting a shadow over pale, angular features. The nun was rarely summoned outside the Imperial Orphanage, where she'd overseen Delphine's charitable reforms in the outer districts. You asked for me, Your Majesty? Delphine gestured to the chair opposite her. Please. Sister Anneliese sat, folding her hands in her lap. I assume this concerns the matter of the education grant. It does, Delphine said, then paused. And it doesn't. The nun waited, her silence expectant. I need someone placed at the St. Gertrude Girls' School in Graz. A mathematics tutor, preferably with military credentials. Someone fluent in Hungarian, Romanian, and Czech. Someone discreet. Sister Anneliese tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly. You already know who you want. Delphine looked down at her hands. He's no longer safe here. But I won't have him vanish into shadows. Not after what he's done. After a long pause, the nun nodded once. There's an opening. The headmistress has been asking for a tutor since Epiphany. I'll write the letter myself. I'm trusting you, Delphine said. You always have, Anneliese replied. Though I never thought I'd see you move a man through the church without a title or a vow. Delphine rose. Neither did I. The next day, she stood at the imperial stables beneath a veil, watching as a plain postal carriage was loaded with crates. Among them, a single trunk marked with the seal of a Jesuit library. She didn't speak to the driver. She didn't look for a face in the crowd. But she saw the initials, H, etched faintly into the side of the trunk as it disappeared into the back of the wagon. 3 weeks passed. The city moved on. Scandal shifted to other corners of the empire. A French ambassador collapsed during a banquet. A rail line near Linz derailed during a snowstorm. Parliament recessed early due to illness sweeping the lower districts. Yet she remained vigilant, rising earlier, reading deeper into reports, and sending handwritten notes to ministries that had grown used to silence from the throne. And each Sunday, she received a letter in careful, unadorned script, signed only with a single line from Horace. integer vitae celerisk perus. On the fourth Sunday, she answered. The reply took 2 days to reach Graz, and 5 more before a response arrived. Folded simply, without seal, it bore a pressed sprig of elderflower inside. No words, just the flower. At the next council session, she announced a new inspection tour across the southern provinces, beginning with the educational institutions in Styria. Her advisors objected. The roads were poor, the season uncertain, the timing ill-advised. She overruled them all. 2 weeks later, Delphine sat in the headmistress's parlor at St. Gertrude's, watching girls recite Latin declensions through a carved wooden screen. The tutor stood at the far end, his back straight, his uniform plain, his face unreadable. "And what does Pax mean, Fräulein?" "Peace," the girl answered. He gave a single nod. Delphine's fingers curled around the arm of the chair. When the lesson ended, the headmistress returned with tea, and the girls filed out in pairs. "I would like to speak with the tutor," Delphine said, pouring her own cup. The headmistress hesitated. "He's reserved. Not one for small talk." "Neither am I." He entered a moment later, closing the door behind him. He did not bow. He simply looked at her. "You shouldn't have come," he said quietly. She held his gaze. "You shouldn't have left." Andreas remained still. "I did what had to be done." "So did I." He glanced at the doorway, then back to her. "This school is not safe for you." "I'm not here for the school." "Then why?" She set her teacup aside and rose, stepping to the window where the hills of Graz stretched in the distance, still dusted with the last of early spring's frost. "You gave up your home, your name, your life in Vienna. For me, that's not something I will let history bury." He stepped closer, but not near enough to touch. "And what would you rather do?" "Write a new one," she said. "With you." A long silence passed between them. Then he reached into his coat and handed her a folded page, one of the classroom compositions, written in a child's looping hand. "She wrote about you," he said. "She called you a queen who listens." Delphine unfolded the page slowly. The ink had smudged in one corner, but the words were clear enough. "She's wrong," Delphine said. "I'm not a queen. I'm an empress." Andreas laughed, quiet and dry. "So you are." She turned to face him. "Come back with me." "I can't." "You can," she said, voice low but firm. "If you return as my legal advisor. I've already prepared the writ. All it needs is your signature." He studied her a long while. "You're certain?" "I'm not certain of anything," she said. "Except you." For the first time since that night in the courtyard, he reached for her hand. Their fingers met, slow and unhurried, the contact quiet but sure. "I'll need time," he said. "You'll have it," she replied. And when they returned to Vienna together, it would not be in secret. The train from Graz pulled into Vienna's western station just after the 6th bell of the morning. No ceremony marked its arrival, no banners or fanfare. Only the hiss of steam and the sharp clatter of boots on the platform as Andreas stepped down, carrying a single leather case, his coat buttoned to the throat against the April chill. Delphine had arranged no escort. She knew better than to draw attention before the appointment was formalized. Instead, she waited in the antechamber of the Hofburg's legal wing, standing before a series of wall-mounted maps that detailed the empire's shifting provincial boundaries. Her dress was a muted burgundy, the color worn only by widowed empresses during state business, and her hair was gathered tightly beneath a hat that cast a narrow shadow over her brow. When the chamberlain opened the door, she did not turn. "He's here," he said. She nodded once. "Send him in." Andreas entered without hesitation. He neither bowed nor waited to be addressed. Instead, he closed the door behind him with deliberate quiet and crossed the room to stand beside her, both of them facing the maps. "You chose the legal wing," he said. "I didn't want marble floors or velvet draperies," she answered. "Here, people speak plainly." He studied the map nearest them, the Banat region, where ethnic lines tangled like threads in a frayed tapestry. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "No," he said, "but I thought I would." She turned to face him fully. "There's a draft of your appointment on my desk. You'll answer only to me. You'll have full access to the Privy Archive and the Chamber of Petitions. And the council? You'll sit outside it. But your recommendations will be read into the minutes under my authority." He met her eyes. "And what am I to you in private?" Delphine paused, her jaw set. "The man I trust more than any other still isn't something I can say aloud in these halls. I'm not asking you to. But one day I might." He lowered his gaze. When that day comes, I'll still be here. She handed him a sealed document. Read it carefully. If you sign, your name goes into the imperial ledger. There's no erasing it. He opened the seal without pause and read the contents with the same focus she'd seen in council briefings line by line, never skipping a word. When he reached the bottom, he took the pen she offered and signed. When he looked up, she said, "You'll be living in the northern wing. The rooms are modest. I didn't expect anything else. There's a private staircase that leads to the registry hall. Use it after dusk. Fewer eyes." He nodded. Then, after a long silence, he said, "I missed the sound of your voice." She did not smile. Instead, she stepped closer, just enough to lower her voice to a thread between them. "There's a cabinet in the archives marked with a false title Treaty of Karoli. Inside, you'll find correspondence from the southern border provinces. And censored. I want your opinion on the land seizure proposals by Wednesday." He understood the signal. It was not affection, not yet not here. But it was closeness, offered through shared purpose. "I'll begin tonight," he said. That night, when the palace quieted and the halls emptied of couriers and clerks, Delphine returned to the forbidden courtyard. Not to wait, but to remember. The snow was gone, replaced by damp earth and the first signs of moss returning to the stone. The roses had not yet bloomed, but the trellises still arched overhead, fragile and bare. She sat on the marble bench without looking behind her. She already knew he wouldn't come here not yet. He was too careful, and she respected that. The next morning, a single envelope rested atop her desk. No seal, no signature. Inside, a list of names. Landowners, magistrates, one cardinal. All of them had supported the false tariffs. Beneath the list, for words written in Andreas's hand. "They fear you now." She folded the page and placed it in the fire. Later that week, she summoned him to her private study. It was a high-ceilinged room with tall windows that faced the Prater and the moving trees beyond. She wore no jewels, no brooch, no lace, only a dark silk gown with a high collar and a single mother-of-pearl button at the throat. "You've read the archive," she said. He stood just beyond the hearth. "I have. And the southern provinces will revolt if the land seizures proceed. I know. But if you grant local councils the right to appoint tax assessors, they'll accept the compromise. And the nobles? They'll protest, but they'll adapt. They always do." She crossed to the window. "It's exhausting, Andreas." "What is?" "Being right." He didn't laugh, but his voice softened. "You've never hesitated to bear it." She turned to him. "I'm tired of bearing things alone." He stepped forward, slowly. "Then don't." She reached for his hand, bare, unloved. Their palms met, warm and steady. "I want something permanent," she said. "Not hidden. Not stolen between council sessions. You'll be challenged." "Let them," she said. "I'll be accused of ambition. Then let them know I chose you." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he said, "What do we call this, Delphine?" "This," she said, letting go only to trace the line of his coat where it met his collar. "We call the beginning." The summer was slow to arrive in Vienna that year. By mid-May, the Danube still ran high with snow melt, and the chestnut trees along the Ringstrasse bloomed late, as if reluctant to wake. Inside the Hofburg, the rhythm of the court shifted away from crisis, toward reconstruction. Delphine's chambers, once seldom opened outside of ceremonial hours, saw more frequent use now. Her desk bore the signs of a ruler in motion. Open ledgers, marked petitions, a cracked seal from the Bohemian Regional Court. But it was the small glass inkpot near the corner, always freshly filled, that marked his presence more than anything else. On a morning thick with mist from the river, Delphine summoned Andreas not to the study, but to the conservatory, an arched, sunlit room rarely entered since her late husband's illness. The windows faced south, overlooking an herb garden that the kitchen staff still tended out of habit. He entered wearing the dark suit of his new office, the high collar brushed clean, his expression unreadable as always. She had not seen him since their last private meeting, though his counsel had reached her daily through precise annotations in the margins of her reports. "I thought this room had been closed," he said, glancing at the pale lemon trees and the tiled planters. "I had it reopened," Delphine answered, not looking up from the letter she was folding. "I needed a place that hadn't been used for politics." "You're not here to discuss land reforms?" "No." He waited. "Do you recall the year we lost the harvest in Carniola?" she asked, setting the letter aside. You were still crown princess. There was a fire in Selge, and the rail lines couldn't carry grain fast enough. She nodded. I stayed in the palace. I wasn't allowed to speak publicly then. I remember. I've never forgotten how helpless I felt. How small. You're not that girl anymore. No, she said, finally looking at him. But I remember her. And I think she would have liked you. Andreas stepped to the edge of the planter. One leaf had yellowed at the tip. He plucked it gently and tucked it into his coat pocket without comment. I received word from the Hungarian delegation this morning, he said. They've agreed to meet in person. In Paich. You'll go? If you approve. I do. She hesitated. And I'll come with you. He turned to her sharply. That's not wise. Perhaps not. But it's necessary. They will not believe I care unless they see my face. They'll see it as a challenge. They already do. He studied her, then said, the eastern carriage route is exposed. You'll need a different escort. I've already arranged for Major Keller. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. I want you to ride in the second carriage. Unmarked, but close. I understand. She glanced at the window. The sunlight had caught the condensation in the upper panes, washing the room in a pale, unsteady glow. Have you told anyone? She asked. No. Not even your sister? She doesn't ask. Delphine's eyes softened. You once said loyalty to me was dangerous. It still is. And yet, I was loyal before it was dangerous. Nothing's changed. She reached for his hand. This time, she did not draw back. His fingers closed around hers, warm and sure. There's something I haven't told you, she said. About the council's succession proposal. His brow furrowed. I assumed they'd withdrawn it. They haven't. They've rewritten it. It now permits the empress to name a consort provided he is of imperial service and bears no foreign allegiance. Andreas went still. They think I'll choose a nobleman. Someone harmless. Someone they can control. They'll never approve me. They won't need to. The clause gives me sole authority. He said nothing for a long moment. Then, quietly, did you ask for the clause? No. Then why give it to you? I think they believe I'm still grieving. That I'll never act on it. And are they wrong? She lifted her chin. Entirely. He exhaled slowly, and she saw something shift in him, not relief, not quite, but recognition. As if a door, long shut, had been quietly unlatched. I'll ride behind your carriage, he said. But if anything happens on that road, it won't. And if it does? Then you do what you've always done, she said. You find me. He nodded once, then released her hand. Not out of fear, but so she could move freely. That evening, she wrote 4 letters in her private script. One to the Hungarian delegation, confirming her arrival. One to Sister Anneliese, requesting a new set of tutors for the southern orphanages. One to the imperial chef, requesting the removal of all venison from the summer menus. And one, and signed, sealed in green wax, addressed only with an initial, H. She left it beneath the lemon tree in the conservatory, knowing he would find it. The next morning, the leaf he had pocketed was gone. But in its place, folded beneath the pot's rim, was a small square of paper with only 2 words, written in precise, deliberate hand. So will I?